One of the greatest characters in the history of professional wrestling is without a doubt Jimmy the Superfly Snuka, WWE Hall of Famer, and he's also one of the most controversial characters in the history of wrestling. I recently posted a bunch of clips from an interview from RF Video of Jimmy Snuka on this channel. Although this was a shoot interview, he pretty much kayfabed overall in this. He kept his mystique about him. The one thing that came off from watching this interview is Snuka is like a larger than life character, and from watching this interview, you don't lose any of the mystique about him. He looks like Jimmy Superfly Snuka. He talks like Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Couple points he gets uncomfortable, of course, when he's asked about the death of Nancy Argentina. He gets extremely uncomfortable. Of course, he was found civilly liable for that death and couldn't stand trial when it was brought back to court for the criminal investigation. I wasn't there, so I can't really comment on that beyond that comment. This civil liability that I guess they never were able to collect on for whatever reason. I don't know why they couldn't garnish his WWE wage. Of course, wrestling on the independent level, it's a lot of under the table stuff, and autograph sessions, a lot of under the table stuff. He also got very uncomfortable when they asked him about drug use. There's probably more wrestlers that use drugs, not only performance enhancing drugs, but recreational drugs. More did than didn't from that 80s era. So I'm not going to hold that against him. I've seen Jimmy Snuka myself many times live for the WWE. I was always a fan of him. The very first wrestling match I ever attended at the Ottawa Civic Center, June of 1989, which was pretty much packed with almost 11,000 people. Snuka was wrestling Honky Tonk Man on that card. And I bought one of those Jimmy Snuka foam I Love You fingers. Saw him numerous times after that. One time that I really remember a lot about Snuka is in 96 at that same arena, the Ottawa Civic Center. They used to have something called the Exhibition, which was like a state fair type of thing, which they don't do anymore. But they used to have big concerts and wrestling shows and stuff at this thing. And in this summer of 1996, I remember WWE had just come with their first event at what's now the Canadian Tire Center. And I liked this show that Jimmy Snuka was on a few weeks later at the Exhibition better than the WWE show. But they had two shows that day. One was at like 2 o'clock. One was at 7 o'clock. Snuka was wrestling the Metal Maniac on both of those shows. And for those who don't know, the Metal Maniac was like his traveling partner. I've interviewed him a bunch of times. More often than not, in those years, he wrestled the Metal Maniac. But what I remember about him in between the two shows, I was a kid, so I was like going on rides and stuff. He was walking around the fairgrounds in his, like, for lack of the better word, I'll say his Fiji Island skirt. I don't know what it would be called other than that. And he had two beautiful girls with him. And it was like everyone was staring at him. It's like, you know, back when nowadays, I mean, you see Kevin Owens walking down the street, no one's going to give a second look. But like Jimmy Snuka, everyone's looking at him like whether they knew he was a wrestler or not. Who is this guy that's all jacked? Looks like he's an islander with these two beautiful girls with him. He was just walking around the fairgrounds, but I just remember the aura and seeing everyone turn their heads and looking at him. And the last time I saw him live was around, I think it was around 98-ish or 97. It was probably actually 97. It was a small show in Arnprior, Ontario, Canada. that I convinced my parents to drive me to, because Jimmy Snuka was supposed to wrestle Jim Neidhart, but he got re-signed by WWE. So somehow it was Jimmy Snuka versus the Brooklyn Brawler. And Snuka on this particular show, even though he was getting up there in age, all I remember, this was in a hockey arena, but there was a good crowd. There was maybe 600, 650 people for this. I mean, the independents were doing well at this time. WWE and WCW were doing well. But I just remember the air that he got off of that Superfly, even at whatever age he was huge. But overall, I mean, this shoot interview is as close as you're going to get delving into the mind of Jimmy Snuka, who Rocky Johnson said, I mean, they up until that incident with the girlfriend, I mean, he was getting a massive push and he was more popular in some places than Hulk Hogan. He had that aura about him. He was legitimately a wild man. That's what we're missing today. The characters that are wild in real life, and that really like transcends and shows to the mainstream. But whatever, they're making more money than ever, so something's doing right. But to me, part of the magic of wrestling in the past was the characters like Jimmy Snuka. So I enjoyed the interview, but there's no doubt that the interviewer seemed a little bit intimidated by him. And one of the funny comments was at the end of the interview, and I don't blame him for being intimidated, especially with how anxious he started to get around certain questions. Where he was like, "Oh, that was easy," when it was clear that like it maybe wasn't actually an easy interview because he was giving very short answers. Grandma Daisy was never a Jimmy Snuka fan. Snuka was kept in the Hall of Fame. I think he was never found criminally guilty, is the reason why. And when they first inducted him, there wasn't really much backlash because the whole controversy only came out in more recent years since the internet, much like the Brody stuff. I don't remember any controversy when they put Carlos Colon in the Hall of Fame, or when they made Carlos Colon affiliated with WWE in Puerto Rico, helping them put on events there. The best characters are the ones that are actually like that in person, such as Ric Flair, Roddy Piper, Terry Funk, Andre the Giant, Don Morocco. I mean, it was just a magical time, and that's what attracted me to wrestling to begin with, these larger than life personalities. Which today, I mean, Brock Lesnar's still under WWE contract. He just doesn't wrestle. Goldberg, even though he's 57, I mean, he's one of those ones that like I can buy into his character. The others just don't. The others just seem like kids performing spots to me. There's nothing interesting about them to me, and that's just how it is. But times change. Out of the legends I've interviewed, who is my favorite? Well, because Billy Graham was like a grandfather figure to me, I would have to say him. And there's another larger than life character, even in his old age. When he walked into a restaurant, people would look, and if they didn't know who he was, what's Billy Graham? And I don't mean to digress onto this, but Billy Graham, I mean, he would constantly cut promos. If you've never been around him in real life, like everything is a promo. He cuts a promo on everything, and he's very loud. So, like, if you're in a restaurant with Billy, whether you know who he is or not, you're going to be looking at him because he's cutting promos on everything, whether the service is good or bad, whether the waitress is attractive, whether someone's being rude. I mean, those guys are just crazy characters. Vader treated me very well. Vader is another guy that was like his character. I mean, he had a nice side to him, very nice side to him, but like his character was an extension of his real personality. Ivan, the ones that are bigger than life, as I said, is there's Lesnar, there's Goldberg. Um, I'll say CM Punk is like his character. There's no difference between him, but CM Punk is not a larger than life personality. And that's not taking anything away from him. But I don't see anyone that's a larger than life personality, to be perfectly honest. It's just the way it is. If you guys think there is someone, put it in the comments. But I don't see any Undertakers in today's wrestling at all. I mean, Omos may have been big, but they were breaking kayfabe with him even when he was a heel, showing him like with his family wherever he's from. I don't know if it was Nigeria or what, but even when he was at the height of his heel run, they were showing him like visiting with his family and stuff. And you know, Omos is just a guy that they signed for being big. It's like it's not like he was Andre the Giant going out every night drinking massive amounts in bars and doing these crazy things in airplanes and like just being a wild, wacky character. The guys today are just like average people performing on a television show. There you go, Grandma. I wouldn't want to mess with you. 6'1". You're a beast. You should get into wrestling.